I'm glad you're here. Find a comfortable place. This episode is about being torn between your life roles. Maybe you feel pulled in different directions, like you're supposed to be in 3 places at once, like every role you play demands something from you, and that you never ever have enough to give. Before we begin, I have a question for you, and I'd really love it if you answered in the comments. Which of your life roles loses most often? Which part of you most often has to step aside so the other parts can keep functioning? Maybe it's you as a friend. Maybe you as a partner. Maybe you as someone who once had passions and dreams. Write it in the comments, because these stories connect us more than we think. And often it's only when we see that someone else feels the same way that we can finally exhale, feel that we're not alone in all of this. I've divided this episode into 3 parts. First, we'll talk about what this role conflict actually is, what it means to be torn between responsibilities, and why it's not just a matter of poor time management. Then we'll go deeper. Where does it come from? Why do so many of us live in this state of permanent conflict? What mechanisms are behind it? Then at the end, and this will be the longest part, we'll talk about what you can do about it, specifically, practically, today, not next year, not when the kids grow up, not when you change jobs, today. All right, let's begin. But first, let me tell you a story that might feel familiar. There was a woman, let's call her Eve, who woke up every morning with the feeling that she was already late. She hadn't even gotten out of bed and she was already late for everything. Eve had 2 kids, an aging mother, a demanding job, and a husband who technically helped, but somehow it was always her who remembered everything. Doctor appointments, birthday gifts, the fact that the fridge was empty. One day, Eve was sitting in her car in the parking lot outside work. She was supposed to walk into a meeting, but she couldn't move. She just sat there and cried. She didn't even know why. Nothing specific had happened. She just cracked. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe you've also sat in a car like that, or locked yourself in the bathroom, or lain awake at night with your eyes wide open thinking, how much longer can I do this? If so, this episode is for you. Imagine a day like this. It's Monday morning. The alarm goes off at 6. You get up because you have to get the kids ready for school. But last night you worked until midnight because deadlines don't wait. You're tired, not the kind of tired that disappears after coffee, the kind where you can't even remember when it started or how long it's been going on. You make breakfast, pack lunch, check whether your son has all his books. Your daughter can't find her socks. Your husband asks if you remember the weekend dinner with his parent. You walk the kids to school. On the way to work, your mom calls. Dad felt bad during the night. Could you stop by? You say you'll come after work. In your head, you're counting. Meeting at 10, presentation at 2, pick up the kids at 5, stop by your parents, get back home, dinner, homework with the kids, bedtime. Somewhere in the middle of all that you were supposed to go to the doctor. You've been rescheduling for 3 months. Somewhere in the middle of all that, you wanted to read the book you got for your birthday 6 months ago. Somewhere in the middle of all that, you promised a friend you'd meet up 2 months ago. And now, in the car, stuck in traffic, you feel it. That feeling that you're stretched like a rubber band, that every part of your life is pulling in a different direction, and that if it pulls any harder, you'll snap. That is role conflict. Psychologists define it as a situation in which the demands of one role make it harder or impossible to meet the demands of another role. It sounds dry, but behind it are millions of everyday dramas. A mother sitting in a work meeting, thinking about her sick child at home. A father driving his son to a game while taking a call from his boss. A daughter caring for aging parents while trying to raise her own children. An employee who wants a promotion but knows it will mean even less time for family. A partner who feels the relationship is dying but has no strength to save it because work eats all the energy. And a person, just a person, who somewhere in all of this has lost themselves. I want to tell you about Agnes. Agnes is 43. She's a manager at a consulting firm. She has 2 kids, a son in 8th grade and a daughter in 5th. Her mother lives alone across town and is struggling more and more. Wherever Agnes is, she feels she should be somewhere else. When she's at work, she thinks about the kids. When she's with the kids, she thinks about her mom. When she's at her mom's, she thinks about work. She's never fully where she is. And because of that, she feels like an imposter everywhere. Agnes isn't an imposter. Agnes is a human being trying to do more than is physically possible and paying for it with guilt, exhaustion, and the loss of herself. Maybe you know that feeling. Maybe sometimes you also feel like an imposter. Like someone pretending they're coping while inside everything is falling apart. If so, I want you to know one thing. This is not your fault. This is not about poor organization. This is about a system that expects the impossible from us, and a culture that taught us we should be able to handle it. Always. Without complaining. To understand a role conflict, we have to step back and ask, why do we live like this? Where did it come from? The answer is complex, but I'll try to simplify it. First, we live longer than ever. That sounds like good news, and it is. Longer life is a huge achievement of medicine, science, and civilization. But every change on this scale has consequences, even ones we couldn't predict. 100 years ago, life had a different structure. Shorter, more predictable. When a woman was 40, her parents were usually already gone, or near the end of life. Children were grown or almost grown. Life stages followed each other faster, and roles, though often imposed, were relatively clear and socially closed. Today that map has fallen apart. A woman in her 40s might have small children or teenagers. She might simultaneously accompany her parents through illness, aging, dependency. She might be at a crucial point in her career because this is when she's expected to be most productive. And at the same time, she might still have 30 or 40 years of life ahead of her. This is a completely new situation in human history. Never before have so many people lived so long in so many roles at once. And never before was it expected that all of it could be balanced without a major cost. The problem is, we don't have ready-made models for it. Neither parents nor culture nor institutions teach us how to do this. Sociologists call it the sandwich generation. We're squeezed between caring for children and caring for aging parents, between responsibility downward and responsibility upward, between responsibility for the future and responsibility for the past, often without space for the present, and without anyone taking care of us. The research is ruthless here. According to a Pew Research Center report from 2023, about 23% of adult Americans are simultaneously caring for aging parents and raising their own children. That's almost 1 in 4 adults. That's not a fringe. That's a new norm. And among women aged 40 to 59, the percentage is even higher, because it's most often women who take on the invisible work of care, the logistics, the emotions, the presence, the vigilance. They're the ones who take time off, turn down promotions, postpone their own needs for later, and very often later never comes. The price can be high. We pay with health, chronic exhaustion, burnout. We pay with careers, relationships, a sense of meaning, and sometimes with our lives lived in a constant state of I have to. Second, expectations keep rising, and they don't rise in a straight line. They pile up, they accumulate, and very rarely does anything disappear in exchange. Once, being a good mother had a simple definition: feed the child, dress them, send them to school, keep them safe. That was enough for a child to grow up well. No one expected a mother to also be a dietitian, therapist, development coach, and emotions manager. Today, a good mother should cook healthy, balanced meals, organize enriching activities, be emotionally available all the time, support the child's passions even if they change constantly, control screen time, build self-esteem, teach empathy, assertiveness, and emotional regulation, and at the same time prepare the child for a world she doesn't fully understand herself: global, competitive, digital. Once, being a good employee meant show up, do your job, leave. Responsibilities were clear. Work had boundaries. After hours meant after hours. Today, a good employee should be engaged, creative, flexible, always available, ready for change, constantly improving, investing in future skills, building a personal brand, and ideally have a passion for the job, so fatigue doesn't look like a problem, but like a lack of motivation. Once, being a good partner meant don't cheat, bring money home, don't drink. The bar was low, often harmful but unambiguous. Today, a good partner should communicate openly, share household responsibilities, be emotionally available, support the other person's growth, anticipate needs including unspoken ones, give space, care for the relationship, maintain intimacy, be romantic, and at the same time not neglect themselves. And so it goes in every role: parent, employee, partner, friend, citizen, a person who takes care of themselves. The bar rises in every sphere at once, and the day still has exactly 24 hours. Psychologist Sheryl Sandberg wrote Lean In, encouraging women to reach for more in their careers. The book became a bestseller and a symbol of an era of belief that if we try hard enough, we can do it. But it also triggered a wave of criticism, because more and more women said, we're already reaching. The problem isn't that women don't reach high enough. The problem is that the system expects them to reach high in every area of life at the same time: career, motherhood, relationship, personal growth, health, body, emotions, without real support, without relief, without rest. And it's no wonder that more and more people feel that no matter how hard they try, they're still not enough. Third, the boundaries between work and home have blurred. Work used to end at a specific moment, Naom, when you left the factory, when you closed the office door. Your body knew it was over, your mind had a chance to switch gears. Work had clear spatial and time boundaries. Today, work has no door you can close. It's on your phone, on your laptop, in your pocket, in your bedroom, in bed right next to you as you try to fall asleep. The pandemic only accelerated a process that was already underway. Millions of people started working from home overnight, without preparation, without new rules, And very quickly it turned out that working from home often means working all the time you're at home. Because if the computer is right there, you can just reply quickly. If the phone is next to you, you can just check. If you're home anyway, you can be available. Always. Research conducted by Microsoft in 2022 showed that after-hours work time increased by 28% since the start of the pandemic. Online meetings became constant, one after another, no breaks, no commutes, that used to paradoxically give you a moment to breathe. And the line between I'm at work and I'm at home started to blur, until finally it practically disappeared. Work entered places that used to be private, the kitchen, the living room, the bedroom, moments that were meant to be only ours. And now we sit at dinner with our family, we talk, we eat, but the phone vibrates. An email from the boss, urgent, and suddenly we're not at dinner anymore. We're at work, body here, mind there. The child says something, but we don't fully hear it. The partner looks at us, but we're absent. No one formally ordered us back to work, but we go back anyway. This isn't about a lack of assertiveness. It's the effect of a world where availability became the norm and rest became a luxury. And so more and more people live in a constant state of tearing between home and work, between being with loved ones and being on standby, between physical presence and psychological absence. Fourth, we don't have a village. There's an African proverb, it takes a village to raise a child, and for most of human history that's how it was. Children grew up in a wider community. Grandmothers, aunts, neighbors, everyone helped. Today we often live far from family. We barely know our neighbors. We work so much we don't have time to build community. And we end up alone with all the roles, all the responsibilities. Sociologist Robert Putnam, in his landmark book Bowling Alone, described how Western societies have gradually lost social capital over the past decades. Fewer people belong to organizations, clubs, and communities. Fewer people have close friends. And more people are left alone with their role conflict. Do you know what's hardest about all of this? These changes happen so fast. Our grandmothers lived in a different world, different roles, different expectations, a different support system. We inherited their patterns, but we live in a completely different reality. They didn't have to answer emails at midnight. They didn't have to compete in a global job market. They didn't have to be the perfect mother, ambitious professional, and athletic health enthusiast at the same time. And we do, or at least we think we do. And that brings us to the most important question. Do we really? Fifth, we were taught that asking for help is weakness. This is the most sneaky one, because even when help is available, we often don't accept it. Men were told that a real man handles things on his own, that asking for help is admitting failure. Women were told that a good mother and wife should manage, that if you can't manage, you're not good enough. And so we live, pretending everything is fine, saying I've got it when we don't, answering I'm fine when someone asks how we're doing, and slowly, burning out. I want to tell you about Mark. Mark is 47, he's an engineer, he has a wife and 3 kids. His father had a stroke 2 years ago and now needs constant care. Mark works full-time. After work, he drives to his father's. On weekends, he tries to make up time with the kids. He and his wife barely talk, they're too exhausted. Mark tried to remember the last time he did something just for himself. He went quiet for a moment. He couldn't remember. Maybe 2 years ago he played soccer with friends. Now there's no time, no right to have time. Dad needs him. The kids need him. The company needs him. He has no right to have time. Because Mark truly believes that he has no right to rest, to have his own time, to be someone more than a function employee, son, father, husband. And maybe you believe that too. Maybe you also think you don't have the right. But I want to tell you something, and please really hear it. You do have the right. You have the right to rest. You have the right to your own time. You have the right to be more than a function. You have the right to a life that is yours, not only service to others. That isn't selfishness, it's common sense. It's taking care of yourself so you can take care of others. Because you can't pour from an empty cup. You can't love other people if you don't leave even a little love for yourself. On airplanes they say, put your own mask on first, then your child's. Why? Because if you pass out, you won't help anyone. The same is true in life. Role conflict isn't just discomfort, it has consequences for health, for relationships, for an entire life. Studies show that people experiencing strong work-family conflict have higher cortisol levels, the stress hormone. They suffer from insomnia more often. They experience symptoms of depression and anxiety more often. A meta-analysis by Allen and colleagues published in the Journal of Applied Psychology reviewed dozens of studies on work-family conflict. The findings were clear. Strong role conflict is linked to lower life satisfaction, lower job satisfaction, lower marital satisfaction, and worse physical health. But there's something else, something we rarely talk about. Role conflict leads to the loss of identity. When for years you're only a function mother, employee, caregiver, you forget who you are outside those roles. Your passions die, your dreams shrink, your self becomes smaller and smaller, and one day you wake up and you don't know who you are. You don't know what you want, you don't know what brings you joy, because for the last 10 years you haven't had time to even think about it. That might be the biggest tragedy of role conflict. Not that we're tired, but that we lose ourselves. I want to tell you about one more study because it feels important. Psychologist Adam Grant from Wharton studied employees across different industries. He asked how they cope with holding multiple roles at once, and he discovered something interesting. It turned out that role conflict itself isn't the biggest problem. The biggest problem is the feeling of lack of control. People who felt they could decide how they divided their time coped better, even if they had the same amount of responsibilities. That's a crucial clue, because it means the goal isn't simply to have less to do. The goal is to feel that you decide, that you choose, that you have some control over your life. And that's what the next part will be about, how to regain at least a little of that control. Alright, enough theory, time for practice. What can you do to reduce role conflict? To stop feeling torn? To regain at least a little of yourself? I have 5 steps for you. Not all of them will fit you. That's normal. Choose one, maybe 2. Start with what feels most realistic. And remember, change doesn't have to be revolutionary. Sometimes a small step makes a bigger difference than a big resolution. Step 1. Audit your roles. Before you change anything, you have to see where you are. Really see it. No self-deception. Take a piece of paper or open a note on your phone and list all the roles you play. For example, mother, wife, daughter, employee, friend, neighbor, PTA member, volunteer. Next to each role, write 2 things. How much time and energy does this role take? Use a scale from 1 to 10. How much satisfaction does it give you? Also 1 to 10. Now look at the list. Are there roles that take a lot and give little? Are there roles you love but you have no time for? Is me on that list? Is there a role called a person who takes care of herself? Here's an example. When Agnes, the woman I mentioned earlier, did this audit, she discovered something surprising. She realized she was on the PTA, because that's what you do. It took a few hours a month. It gave her no satisfaction. And at the same time, she had no time to meet her friends, something that used to matter deeply to her. The audit is the first step, because you can't change something you can't see. And here's what's interesting. You might discover roles you don't even think of, invisible roles. Like the person who remembers everyone's birthdays, the person who plans vacations, the person who knows where all the documents are, the person who remembers when the toothpaste is running out. That's the invisible work people talk about more and more. Emotional labor, organizational labor, work nobody notices, but that consumes an enormous amount of energy. When you do your audit, include those invisible roles too. They count and they exhaust you too. This week's exercise, list all your roles. Rate each one for energy and satisfaction. Then ask yourself, which role needs change the most? You don't have to change anything yet. Just see it. Step 2. Say goodbye to the illusion I can do it all. This might be the hardest step because it touches our ego, our self-image as someone who manages. But the truth is, you can't do everything. You can't be the perfect mother, perfect wife, perfect daughter, perfect employee, and still have time for yourself. It's physically impossible. Something has to give. The only question is, what? And do you choose it, or does life choose for you? Because if you don't make a conscious choice, what usually gives way is what doesn't scream, what doesn't have a deadline. And you know what usually fits that description? You, your needs, your health, your dreams. There's a concept in psychology I really love. It's called good enough. It was created by Donald Winnicott, a British pediatrician and psychoanalyst. He talked about the good enough mother, not perfect, but present. Someone who makes mistakes but loves. Someone who doesn't do everything flawlessly, but does what matters most. And interestingly, Winnicott argued that a good enough mother is better for a child than a perfect mother, because she teaches a child that the world isn't perfect, that you can make mistakes and still be worthy. You can apply this idea to all your roles. A good enough employee, a good enough daughter, a good enough partner. Not perfect, good enough. That's not giving up. That's realism. It's acknowledging you're human, not a machine. I want to recommend a book, The Gifts of Imperfection. It's by Brené Brown, a researcher from the University of Houston, who spent years studying shame and vulnerability. Brown writes about how perfectionism destroys us, how the belief that we have to be perfect to be loved leads to exhaustion, depression, anxiety, and how freeing it can be to accept that we're imperfect and that it's okay. One idea from that book especially stayed with me. Perfectionism isn't striving for excellence. It's believing that if we do everything perfectly and look perfect, we can avoid the pain of shame, judgment, and blame. In other words, perfectionism is armor, an attempt to protect yourself from rejection. but the armor is too heavy and eventually it crushes us. When you accept good enough, you take off that armor and the world doesn't collapse. People still love you, maybe even more, because they can see the real you. Exercise. For each role you listed, define good enough. What specifically has to happen for you to say, I did this well enough? Example for the role of mother. Good enough means the kids are fed, safe, and they know I love them. I don't have to do creative projects every day. I don't have to cook 3-course dinners. I don't have to be available 24/7. It's enough that I'm truly present, really present, for some time each day. That's your good enough. Nobody else can define it for you. Step 3. Learn to say no. I know you've heard it a million times. Learn to say no. Easy to say. Harder to do, because no can sound harsh, selfish, impolite, especially for someone who's been taught their whole life to help, to be nice, not to cause problems. So I want to offer a different approach. It's not about a hard no. It's about a gentle not now, or not like this. It's about setting boundaries without burning bridges. Here are 3 techniques that can help. 1. Let me check and get back to you. When someone asks you for something, you don't have to answer immediately. You can say, that sounds interesting. Let me check my calendar and I'll get back to you. It gives you time to honestly consider whether you want to and can do it, without pressure, without being backed into a corner. And then, if you decide you can't, you can say no with distance. Write an email. Call when you're ready. 2. I can't do this, but I can. When you refuse, you can offer an alternative. It softens the refusal and shows you care. For example, I can't help you move today, but I can come on Saturday for 2 hours. Or, I can't lead this project, but I can recommend someone who'd be great. 3. This matters to me, so I have to say no. Sometimes it helps to explain why you're refusing, not because you have to justify yourself. You don't, but because it can help the other person understand. For example, I can't stay late at work because I promised my daughter I'd be at her performance. That's really important to me. Notice, you're not saying sorry, you're not saying, unfortunately, you're saying, this is important to me, because it is. Your life matters, your priorities matter. Let me tell you about a study. Psychologists Vanessa Bones and Francis Flynn ran a series of experiments that showed something surprising. People systematically overestimate how negatively others will react to being told no. In other words, we're afraid to say no because we think people will be offended, angry, stop liking us. But in reality, their reaction is usually much kinder than we expect. People understand. People have limits too. People respect those who know their boundaries. And one more thing, saying no gets easier with practice. At first it can feel very hard. You might feel anxiety, guilt, fear of the reaction. That's normal. But every time you say no and see that the world didn't collapse, it gets easier. Your brain learns you can refuse and survive. You can have boundaries and still be liked. It's like a muscle. The more you train it, the stronger it gets. And I want to say something important. There's a difference between being nice and being good. Being nice is saying yes to everything to avoid conflict, to keep everyone happy, to avoid being judged. Being good is different. It's caring for others and yourself. It's telling the truth with respect. It's setting boundaries that protect your health and relationships. The paradox is that being too nice often leads to worse relationships because resentment builds, because you feel used, because eventually you explode or shut down completely. Being good with boundaries leads to healthier relationships. Because you're authentic, people know where they stand. You give from the heart, not from obligation. Exercise. For the next week, every time someone asks you for something, use the first technique. Let me check and get back to you. Give yourself time. Consider whether you really want to and can do it, then respond. You'll be surprised how many things suddenly become less urgent when you don't agree right away. Step 4. Ask for help specifically. For many people, this is the hardest one. Asking for help, because it requires admitting you're not managing, that you need support, that you're not self-sufficient. But the truth is, nobody is self-sufficient. Nobody. People who look like they're on top of everything simply have a better support system, or they hide it better. Often the problem is that we ask for help the wrong way. We say, I need help, but that's too vague. The other person doesn't know what to do. Or we say, why do I have to do everything myself? But that's an accusation, not a request. It triggers defensiveness, not willingness. An effective request for help is specific. Instead of help me with the kids, say, can you pick up the kids from school on Thursday? I have an important meeting. Instead of I can't handle my parents, say, could you go to Dad's on Saturday instead of me? I really need that day for myself. Instead of everyone has support except me, say, I need someone who can help me with groceries once a week. Can we figure something out? Specificity changes everything because people often want to help. They just don't know how. Mark, the man I mentioned, didn't ask anyone for help with his father for 2 years. He thought it was his duty, his solitary burden. Eventually he broke down. He literally ended up in the hospital from exhaustion. And only then did the family mobilize. His sister started coming to their father twice a week. His brother arranged a caregiver for a few hours a day. Mark's wife took over some of the household tasks Mark used to do. And you know what? If Mark had asked for help 2 years earlier, he probably would have gotten it. But he didn't ask because he believed he was supposed to handle it alone. And because of that, he almost killed himself. Don't wait until you collapse. Ask now, specifically. One more thing. Sometimes help can be paid help, and that's okay too. I know that for many people, hiring help, a cleaner, caregiver, household support feels like a luxury. Or a sign of weakness, like you should be able to manage on your own. But try thinking about it differently. Your time is limited, your energy is limited. If you can delegate something that drains you, and as a result have more of yourself or family work, and that's an investment, not weakness. I'm not saying you have to. Not everyone can afford it, but if you can consider it without guilt. Exercise. Identify one task you can delegate. 1. Not everything, 1. And ask for help, specifically. It could be your partner, family, a friend, a co-worker. It could be paid help, a cleaner, caregiver, assistant. One task, one request, that's enough to start. And remember, help sometimes comes from unexpected places. Maybe it's a neighbor who has kids the same age and you can trade school pickups. Maybe it's a colleague who can take part of a project because they're in a lighter season. Maybe it's an online support group of people in a similar situation. Look around. Help is often closer than you think. You just have to ask. And remember, asking for help isn't weakness, it's strength, it's wisdom, it's understanding that absolutely nobody can do everything alone. The strongest people I know are the ones who can ask for help. They understand their limits, they respect their time and energy, they know cooperation takes you further than solitary struggle. Step 5. Find your 15 minutes. I know what you're thinking. I don't have time for myself. I really don't. And I believe you. I know what days full of responsibilities look like. I know that sometimes even going to the bathroom in peace feels like a luxury. But I want to ask you for one thing. Find 15 minutes, just 15 minutes, every day for you. Not to be productive, not to achieve something, just to be yourself, with yourself. It could be a morning coffee before the rest of the house wakes up. It could be a short walk during lunch. It could be 15 minutes in the car before you go inside. Eyes closed, favorite music. It could be a hot bath after the kids fall asleep. It could be reading a few pages before bed. What it is doesn't matter. What matters is that it's yours, intentional, regular. Studies show that even short moments of recovery matter enormously. Psychologists call it micro-rest, and it turns out that several short breaks during the day can be more effective than one long rest once a week. Because it's not about the amount. It's about regularity. It's about sending yourself a signal. I matter. My rest matters. I deserve these 15 minutes. There's a term in psychology, self-compassion. Self-compassion means treating yourself with the same kindness you would give a good friend. Think about it. If your friend told you she was exhausted, had no time for herself, felt torn between responsibilities, what would you say to her? Probably not. Get it together. Others have it worse. You probably say, you need to find a moment for yourself. You deserve rest. You can't pour from an empty cup. So why don't you say that to yourself? Those 15 minutes aren't selfishness. They're self-compassion in practice. Agnes, the woman I mentioned, started waking up 20 minutes earlier. At first it was hard. But after a week, she discovered that her quiet morning coffee was the most valuable moment of her day, that it gave her strength for everything else. It sounds strange, she said, but those 20 minutes made me feel like I still exist, like I'm not just a function, like there's something in me beyond the to-do list. And you know what? Science supports this. Burnout research shows that one of the key protective factors is psychological detachment from work and obligations. It's not about never thinking about problems. It's about having moments when you consciously disconnect, when you allow yourself to simply be. Researchers at the University of Mannheim found that people who can detach after work, even briefly, have lower stress, better sleep quality, and higher life satisfaction. Those 15 minutes aren't a luxury. They're a necessity, an investment in your mental health. But I understand it can be hard. Guilt might show up. How can I sit and do nothing when there's so much to do? So I want to tell you one thing. This isn't doing nothing. It's recovery. It's recharging. It's caring for the tool that lets you function. Think of your phone. If you don't charge the battery, it shuts off. Can you use it then? No. No matter how much you want to, you have a battery too, and it needs charging. Those 15 minutes are your charger. Exercise. Find your 15 minutes. Decide specifically. When will it be? Where? What will you do? And for 1 week, protect that time like the most important appointment in your calendar, because it is an appointment with yourself. Let's go back to the beginning. Role conflict isn't your fault. We live in times that demand the impossible. Being everywhere at once, giving to everyone, being perfect in every area of life. That's not possible. And it's not your failure that you can't achieve it. It's the failure of a system that sets unrealistic expectations. But you can do something about it. Not everything. Not right away. But something. You can see your roles and name them. Do an audit. See what the imbalance is. You can say goodbye to the illusion that you must be perfect. Embrace good enough, because good enough really is enough. You can learn to say no gently, without guilt, without burning bridges, with respect for yourself and others. You can ask for help, specifically, because people often want to help. They just don't know how. You can find 15 minutes for yourself every day because you deserve that time, and because you can't pour from an empty cup. And that's enough for a start. Change doesn't have to be a revolution. Sometimes it's one less yes, one more request for help, 15 minutes of silence. Then remember, not everything I said will fit you. Everyone has a different situation, different possibilities, different limitations. Take what works for you. Leave the rest. But take something. Make at least one small step. Today. Because you deserve a life where you aren't constantly torn between roles, where there's room for all your roles, but also room for you. You as a person, not a function. At the end, I want to tell you one thing. The fact that you feel torn doesn't mean you're doing something wrong. It means you care about your kids, your parents, your work, your relationship, your friendships. It means you want to be good in everything. You have a heart, and that's beautiful, truly. But that heart needs care to your care, because if you don't take care of yourself, who will? If this episode helped you, leave a thumbs up. It genuinely helps it reach other people who might need it. People who maybe right now are sitting torn between 1,000 responsibilities and thinking something is wrong with them. It isn't. Nothing is wrong with them either. If you want more conversations like this, subscribe to the channel. We'll be here together, step by step. No pressure, no rush, because change doesn't have to be fast, it has to be yours. And come back to the question from the beginning. Write in the comments, which of your roles loses most often? Which part of you has to step aside most often? I want to read it, because these stories connect us. Because when we see that someone else feels the same, we can finally breathe, feel that we're not alone. And we're not. Remember Eve from the beginning, the one who cried in the parking lot? She started with one step, literally one. She began taking a 10-minute walk during her lunch break, alone, without her phone. After a month, she added a second step. She started saying, "Let me check and get back to you," instead of an automatic yes. After 3 months, she asked her husband to take over mornings with the kids twice a week, specifically, without accusations. She simply asked. Did her life change radically? No. She still has a lot of responsibilities. She still sometimes feels torn. But something changed. Eve felt she had at least a little control, that she was the one deciding, that somewhere in all of this, there was still her, not only her roles. And that's enough for a start. Thank you for being here. See you in the next episode. You have one life. Don't waste it, and remember, you matter not only as a mother, father, employee, caregiver, but as a human being. as you